Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the people joining from all around the world. And especially Jeremy, who has joined us from Portland in his, with a coffee morning in this regard. My name is Avinav, and I'm the product manager for Creative Rights Initiative. Creative Rights Initiative is an attempt from Wacom to bring about, to aid our artists and creators in the digital space with a better management of their digital rights. And here I am today joined by the very influential people who have helped us shape this service, have helped us define a lot of the key points along the service by providing feedback and supporting us in directly shaping the principles of the service. So Creative Rights Initiative was started by, with the philosophy that we want to empower our artists in the digital space, that we want to provide them a means to better manage their, the identity of their content in the digital space, and thereby also create a more regulated environment around space. And Wacom achieves this, or Wacom aims to achieve this by delivering a service that wants to record a permanent proof of authorship and create a permanent link between the artist and the registration in the digital space. How do we achieve this? We are working with our own proprietary technology that enables creators to sign their digital content and always be referred by the content itself, regardless of the degree of temperament the content has been subjected to or the file format that has been changed. And we believe that creating this inseparable bond between the artist and the content allows an environment where everyone is able to identify who the author of the content is and what rights are associated with the content in the digital space. So in addition to having this permanent identity, once you're able to create this link, what we can achieve is that we can now define a framework for people to connect to one another, to create proper collaboration agreements with one another, to create a way in which artists can evolve their content. As we know that creative content is not a static object, but it's more now a dynamic object where it passes from the hands from multiple people to multiple spaces and goes from concept art to 3D models to an animation to ends up in some sort of a movie. And through an elaborate contracting and licensing system that we've developed for the CRI, we've developed a safe way for creatives to interact with this, use content that have been created by other people, while always having a clear picture on what the creative, what is the legal space around the creative content. And we believe that this would not only benefit the creators, but anyone who interacts with the creative content, anyone who wants to use the creative content, always has a way to know if they are allowed to do this, how they can do this, and who is behind this. So with this space, we want to achieve a framework for creative artists and provide them a much more secure environment to work in the digital space. And in this session, I've invited 5 very special people who have been very influential in helping us shape this content. And I would like to first introduce our panelists here. Firstly, I'm joined on stage here by Mike Elianek. So Mike is a creative researcher. Besides being one of a very accomplished artist, having done projects like Terminator, Dark Fate, and in his past life worked for companies like Skoda, designed amazing stuff around there. And not just that, he's also a researcher pursuing his PhD, a doctoral research around ideation and creativity and how creative content attributes in this regard. Joining us with Mike Elianek, we've got Professor Michel Klein, who is the head of studies at the Digital Film Design program in the Medienhochschule Düsseldorf. And interesting thing about Mr. Klein is that he's a very early computer animation pioneer, and he started his career very early in the days where animation was something different than what we know today. And it's really an honor to have you here on stage to have you supporting this initiative. And thank you for being in this regard present with us today. Joining us online, we've got Robert. Robert is joining us from Munich. It would have been great to have you here as well, but because of Corona, we have to see you on a screen. But nevertheless, it's great to have you here. And Robert is a specialist in motion graphics and does a wide range of projects. And especially, he's very passionate about teaching creativity. He does a lot of talks, and he's quite influential around this area. And I think one of the key reasons Robert has contributed is that because he loves to share his experience and knowledge around processes, and especially how people work towards commercial projects. I think this is a very nice touch to the session that we can have here. Joining us from Portland, Oregon at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, we've got Jeremy. I'm so glad that you could make it. I was a little worried that you would. It is a little bit too early for you this morning. But so Jeremy's here, and Jeremy has, in his past life, I would say, he was an animator working for Disney, Marvel, a lot of the big companies. And at one point, Jeremy founded his own brand where he loves to do his own style of art, which is creating inky, hyper-detailed world of biomechanical women and animals. And it's under the brand Inkshift. So thank you, Jeremy, for joining us. Last but not the least, one of the most important persons for our Creative Rights Initiative is Mr. Dr. Barney Sievers. And he is joining us from the Fieldfisher office in Hamburg. And he's a German qualified lawyer with his specialization in copyright, media, and commercial law. And he advises a lot of the big clients around this space. And I think, I until recently didn't know that he has like a book written on this special topic as well, which is great. And Dr. Sievers has been quite influential in designing the legal framework of the service that we are building. And it's great to have him here as well. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for making it on time. And I've prepared some questions for you guys that we want like to talk about. And so maybe we can start with Mike a bit. So let's start with a little bit of the basics. Why do you consider creative rights to be such an important topic? What is your opinion around creative rights, and why should artists be aware about this topic?
Yeah, I think that's the essential question. But let me first thank you for having me here, and also let me express the appreciation for the possibility to talk about this project, because we are cooking it for almost 2 years now, if I remember well. But let's talk about these basics. Once upon a time, and I remember that time because I'm quite old, we used to create physical objects that were artifacts. And the advantage of such an approach to creation was that that physical object existed in one unique piece. And that was the value itself. However, we live in the 21st century. We live in a so-called digital age, where anything created in a digital universe can exist in multiple copies. That's one thing. The other thing is that it's really hard to prove who created the original, the first object, that JPEG, that image, that 3D file, that was the first one. And it's really difficult to associate it with someone. And also it makes it difficult for the creator to monetize it. It's a kind of a popular opinion that the the artists, they live out of the thin air, but the thing is they have to pay the bills as well. So the way to monetize the digital artwork was very complicated. So in my eyes, the CRI gives us the opportunity to create the unique record, the originality record for the specific artwork. So for me as a creator, this is really an essential thing in the creation process, because I can prove not just the authorship on a specific digital file, but also I can prove and somehow make transparent the past, how I created that digital artwork.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, it's very interesting. And maybe just a quick annexation to that. How does this link to your research on the ideation part?
That might be a funny one. So let me give you a bit of the insights. Basically, any artwork, and it doesn't really matter if it's the final design for an automobile or for the billionaire's spaceship. It started its life in the ideation process, and this is subject matter of my dissertation. And the ideation is literally the process where we get that idea that leads us to that final execution. And that ideation is usually manifested through a lot of sketches, usually sketches. And those sketches, I've heard, better said, it's I've researched that almost 80% of the work is never shown to a final client, to the client. 80% of the work is that ideation process. But with the possibility to sign digitally through the CRI process, each of those sketches, we can prove the originality and the authorship of the idea, not just that final piece. So this is something really unique in this approach.
Thanks for sharing your insights. My second question would be to Robert, because I want to talk with you a little bit about attribution, because how easy it is for you to be recognized as a creator, and what are the steps you take to ensure that you as an author are recognized for the work you do?
So first of all, just as Mike said, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to join this panel among this fantastic artists and people contributing to this. As for your question, I think there's not really an easy answer to that, because it's quite complex, because you have to differentiate between a commercial work, which was commissioned by a studio, by a client. Then you have to have the classical artist part on the other side, right? Content that is created just by the pure will to create art and wasn't commissioned by someone to say like, or create an image with a cat in space dressed up as an astronaut, for example. So there's a huge difference right there already to differentiate between attribution. Because obviously, if you create something as a commission project, then you are the creator, and of course you can prove it by having all the source files, which is always complicated. So it's good to have some means of digital fingerprinting the files. Whereas as an artist, if you just output content out there, of course people likely pick it up, maybe steal it, and they always can say we don't know who did it. Right, so having it in the file itself, not just as an attribution somewhere on a website or on a disclaimer, is very important. And in terms of how what steps I do is, to me, it's very important to have attribution to certain steps or to certain people that have been involved in a project. For example, the only way I'm doing it right now, because I do very little art, most of the stuff that I do is commercial projects that have been commissioned by a client, and I do work together with co-workers. So what we do is usually we have a project website, let's say on my Behance page or on my website that says, okay, director was this and this person, 3D lead was this person. So it's always like a written description on who did what, and that's the way I'm protecting or disclaiming who did what at this point.
Yep. Thank you for sharing this. I think this is quite interesting to know the active steps that you have to take to ensure this in this regard. Maybe Jeremy, to you, you're quite experienced in this area, and you're also quite passionate about the topic about ownership and protecting your work. So what's your philosophy here? How do you protect your work?
Good morning, as always. Thanks for having me. I think my approach is that social media is basically it's a free for all, in that you just place your work out there and you rely on your and everybody's better nature to just sort of leave it at that. Obviously, that's not how reality works out. I think the easiest way to protect your work would be to either sign it, which is the lowest form of protection. The next step will be Watermark. And short of that, in case of infringement, you would have to rely on copyright protection, which at least in the US is assigned upon creation, whether somebody knows it or not. It's basically, my philosophy is, you can't live in fear. You have to be able to create freely, and and at worst, we keep our lawyer friends in steady work. So
Thanks for sharing this. Thanks. Maybe to Michel, Klein here, because you are especially working with a lot of future professionals. Do you give them any advice to watch out for this topic? Do you recommend any steps that they should take?
Yes, also from my side, thanks for the invitation and having me here. Yes, this is a topic what drives us for decades. In my studies, we never had this topic about budgets or project management and all this stuff. So what I do is clarification. I clarify, I inform my students about what is the value of your work. That is the first interesting question you have to answer. What is the value of your work? What can I charge for my work? And then you can think about what is the value of my rights, when I sell it again. So what I do is I give a deep insight in how I calculate my project in my studio, what a liquidity plan is, what it means to run a business, so that they understand we have two types of work. We get paid by time or we get paid by value. And I have a lot of situations in my studio where I get paid by time and then I get paid by value. And that is what I try to communicate to my students, because they need to get sensitized about the topic money. And if they understand what their value is of the work, what they can earn in the industry, or what they can charge for a specific type of work, they can think further about, okay, this is my work, I want to protect it, and I know exactly when a client asks me what I have to answer. Yep. So that's my point of view.
A very interesting approach to make them aware that your work is not just something that you do for nothing or just like a hobby, yes, but it's actually something you should value and you should kind of attribute it with some credentials around it.
Yeah, that's the issue in our industry, that people you need intrinsic motivation to do the profession. And you started mostly as a hobby, like what I did, and then you never care about to a special point, okay, it's a business. Yeah. And that is what I try to communicate. And I'm very happy that we have in our studies, in our curriculum, topics like project management, where you have to estimate a project. And it's very interesting, the point of view of my students and what I tell them then, what the project really costs. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Interesting. Thanks for sharing this. Maybe a question I have for Dr. Sievers is, because he's like dealing with these on a daily basis. Can you share your view on if you consider this proof of authorship being something important, and like, is there something that in your experience creators usually miss in this regard?
Right. First of all, thank you for having me as well. From a legal point of view, the answer is clearly authorship is key. So it's a main condition for ownership, and especially important for moral rights of artists. If you cannot prove authorship, you likely cannot bring any claims in your artworks. So this is very, very crucial. For example, if you decide you want to apply for an interim injunction against the breach of your copyright, first thing the judge will ask you is proof of ownership. If you cannot bring proof of ownership, he will dismiss your case. And the second thing is, and this is very crucial as well, also a licensee needs proof of ownership, because to license a work from somebody who actually does not own the work doesn't bring you anything. So from this perspective, it's very crucial to be able to prove your ownership. And we should keep in mind, as Jeremy already said, authorship is assigned by creation and does not require registration with the public authority, like it would be the case for trademarks. The downside of this is that you also cannot refer to a public register to proof of authorship, just saying, look, this is the register. I'm the copyright owner, I'm the author. So you really need other means of proof. And especially with regards to digital artworks, there's no physical original. And so the proof is getting sometimes harder. And systems based on watermarks are very helpful in this respect. When addressing your question on whether artists miss something when they send their work to clients, I think not having to register your artwork in a register is quite helpful, because you don't lose your rights when you just send your artwork to a client without having registered the work. However, what's the most crucial point, and which is missed out quite often, is you should just make clear whether your work can be used with copyright attribution or without, and on which conditions, in terms of, is it an exclusive or a non-exclusive license? Are there any limitations regarding territory, time, or media? And this is sometimes not really talked through between an artist and its clients.
Thank you for sharing this. And I think this was also one of the key principles we had, that authorship and licensing is so closely related, because as you mentioned, without authorship, you cannot have licensing. And I think tying these two things together and making it easy for the artist is going to be a very interesting step. But this is moving now to a very interesting question that I have, and I would like to ask Jeremy about it. Because now when we talk about licensing, right? If you want someone to use your work, let's say that there is a 3D modeler who wants to take your work and build a 3D model about it, would you be open for it? If yes, under what conditions?
I'm always open to licensing, but it kind of, like I said, it really depends on who and what it's licensed for. My art gets licensed a lot for like pins and general promotion by companies. In the case of your 3D modeler, we would have to come to some sort of agreement. Generally, I put a limitation on time frame and availability, because it just creates more, how to put it, it just creates like a higher perceived value and exclusivity if it's just certainly available only for a certain time. With clients, and well, you're also you're making a distinction here between private clients and companies, and what I find is that most times you need a good contract, and those are so key. Like Dr. Siever said, it's really about, what is your agreement? Like, what are you agreeing to, and for how long, and how do you back that up? I think so many artists don't have even a basic contract. It's word of mouth. It's an email. I mean, that would technically pass. It's a memorandum of agreement. That's the lowest form. But there's so many ways that you can get a contract made. There's companies like Drawn and Drafted that offer these free or really cheap contracts. But yeah, it comes down to communication and agreement, and it's time, media, whatever other limitations you can think of.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the bottom line here is that you need to have some sort of a regulated environment if you want to retain a say in this regard, right? Yeah, and I think my next question would be here to Mike in this regard. That do you have a case where something didn't work out on these lines, and like if your content has been used without your permission, how did you resolve this?
Oh yeah, that's a great question, because I'm pretty sure that everyone would have a similar story. Well, the thing is that the digital artwork is only safe when you put it on the USB stick and keep it in your pocket. But the moment you publish it, and it doesn't really matter if it's Facebook, Instagram, or the ArtStation, your professional portfolio, or your website, the moment you publish it, you lose control what's going on, what's happening. So on one side, and it really doesn't matter if you publish a commercial project or something that you did, for your own fun, as a personal project. It doesn't really matter, because on one side, you may appreciate that people are sharing your artwork on the Instagram. You can see how the virality, is that the pronunciation? Virality, how it grows. You feel the engagement of the audience, and you feel that it speaks to the audience. You feel like, this is the right satisfaction for the artist, for the creator, that you are doing the things right. The joy ends at the moment where you find out that, and this is the existing case that happened to me. I've designed some drones that became quite popular in 2014, if I remember well. And that one particular image became really viral. It was everywhere. Until the moment I found it that an adult site used it as a clickbait image. It was trying to attract, adult males interested in this technology to click and get, redirected to something that I would never agree to be connected with. And I was trying to complain about it, but the thing was that the advertisement and the mechanics they were using for promoting their website using my stolen image, they were absolutely non-transparent. So I couldn't actually sue anyone, because there was no one to sue, because it was so non-transparent, and I gave it up. But I was really, really desperate. But the fact is, and the sad fact is, that there was the moment where someone was making money on your artwork without letting you know, without letting you participate. The other case was that it's an older case that a magazine actually took some of the images, they were the airships, and created and used them for the illustration. It was an A4 full-size, full-page illustration. And that was much easier for me to, you guys are using my artwork without my permission. So I called them, I wrote them an email, and their answer was, we got it from the website with the free images. Done. So you can feel the desperation is still there. And even that case, it was really bitter, because they accused me that I'm trying to participate on their popularity. That was very sad. So yes, there are those cases, and I'm so happy that the CRI may help me to kind of prevent those situations to repeat.
Yep, definitely. That's some of the goals we have to avoid these kind of uncomfortable situations. Maybe Dr. Sievers, in a quick way, if you could tell us if there are any common challenges you see when people collaborate, especially like when two artists come together and work, or like when one person is using someone else's work in another context.
Yeah,
something you
sure.
would share.
Yeah, I think like in every relationship, at the beginning of a project, people are always best friends and so excited to get started. And the real problems, they normally start later on. Then you suddenly realize not everybody is on the same page. You have a completely different understanding on how the project should go and how it should be finalized and commercialized. And But once the heat is on and there's a dispute, it's very hard to mutually agree on reasonable terms. So, and then the project is simply governed by statutory provisions, which don't provide a very good solution in the most cases. So you have a complex co-ownership and all that, what you normally would avoid. So clear advice is always like, at least agree on minimal terms for the collaboration and define whether this is a work for hire project with a project owner, or it's a more like a real team project where all team members participate in the revenues and all these, what you normally would agree if you want to work together with somebody. So, and this is just like, you should do that at the start of the project, because later on it's gonna get hard.
Thank you for sharing this. And I think this is going to be, as you said, it's a lovely relationship at the beginning. And I think, we want our artists to work with a little bit of safety around when they collaborate. So some of the things we want to address. My next question would be to you. Maybe, do you have some guidelines that you share for, because as we can see, like having control on your artwork seems to be a big challenge, especially when you go online. As a professor, what do you tell your students what they should do around this, and what do you do maybe on this regard?
Yeah, at the end, as Mike also explained, in the age of digital revolution and the globalization and the internet, you can't do anything really special. I mean, when I have an original artwork, let's say I put it on ArtStation, yeah, and someone is abusing it, what should I do against it? I could one time per month Google for my, do a picture search for my pictures and check out who is abusing it. But from my experience, you can't really protect the artwork except you're a bigger company, you have a lawyer responsible for this, no matter what it costs, because from my experience, when you try to take legal action against someone, here it takes a couple of years maybe to clarify, depending on the case. Yeah. So I learned in my career also as a company owner that there are rare cases where it's really worth to go against something. Yeah. Otherwise, it takes you time, money, and what I have an example. We created an animation for the Zurich Chamber Orchestra, which won 14 awards, and it really fast got boot. What is a good boot when people copy it? Free booted. Got free booted on several social media sites, YouTube, and it was a little bit annoying that these guys got more clicks than our original movie. But what should I do? I can't do anything against it. I just can tell these guys, could you please give credits to my website? And that's all, for this moment.
Yeah. It is indeed a difficult challenge, as I understand from everyone here. But sad but true.
Yeah, sad but true. But there is no real advice, because every time when you think about it, I mean, this is a question which drives us since I came from my studies for visual communications. How can we protect our work? And everyone knows it will be an expensive task if I hire a lawyer. Then I pay more to the lawyer than I make with my work at the end.
Yep. Thank you for bringing this out. And I think maybe this is a good point now to transition, because we are running also a little bit behind time, as I see, to talk about a little bit about the CRI. And because some of these issues that have been talked about are at the heart of the challenges we want to solve for the creative community. And maybe I can start with Robert, because that was I missed the question for Robert in this regard. And maybe, do you see the CRI? Because having seen the video and having a quick introduction to what Wacom is attempting to do in its initiative, CRI I refer as Creative Rights Initiative. So do you see this service being helpful to you? Are there any risks you see even? Can you share some thoughts here?
Well, I mean, it's certainly more helpful than it is, not helpful, obviously. I mean, and anything that is geared and aimed towards artists and creators to help them, prove authorship is something that is definitely something that you want to try to do. Again, as I said, most of my work is not like the typical art work in terms of not commissioned art that I'm outputting, because I don't have the time to create art. So mostly it's commissioned work that has been ordered by a client. However, all those things that, for example, Mike explained about, work being stolen, all that happened to me, of course, as well with commercial work, where you see things being copied. And so it's tricky. And what I can do is, since mostly what we produce is films, movies, animations, it's not like it's an image where you have the specific fingerprint or watermark in there. So it's mostly stuff that will land on YouTube or any other platform that will be shown. So it's kind of difficult to because you cannot really download the file, So when you get that file, I don't know what happens with that watermark. So in that regards, it's a little bit complicated for videos, in my opinion, at this point. For example, whereas if you do something for a movie, let's say, working on opening titles or visual effects, things that we did in the past, then obviously this will be distributed, and any digital watermark will probably not be in that file if it's on, let's say, Blu-ray or on, I don't know, iTunes, Amazon, whatever. However, it's in the credits. That's one thing. However, if you put a file online on my ArtStation, then I will definitely look at, whenever it's like a somewhat semi-finished file that I'm outputting as a process or behind the scenes looks, then of course I can totally imagine, embedding that information into those files. But as for the final project, I think it's a little bit tricky. Yep. At this point, but I definitely want to try to use it, and it's definitely something that can't hurt trying.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think this is you're pointing out a very interesting topic about how this works and how attribution would work in the future in this regard as well. So maybe to Mike here, Mike Elianek, do you see an impact that a service like this could have on a creative community? Do you see that people would feel different about managing the aspect of digital rights if there was an easier way to do it?
I'm tempted to say no, but no, it's completely the opposite. It's the impact is massive. Michel spoke about the lack of the resources to fight against this crime, and this is really crucial because every artist prefers to spend the time on creating another artwork rather than fighting those windmills. This is one thing. So the simple way to sign up digitally your artwork, to make it unique, to prove the uniqueness, and also to assign the proper license to define the usage of the artwork. This is really essential. And I think it builds up the framework for every artist to kind of simplify this whole process. Even for myself, before I've started to work with Avinav and the rest of the team, which is a pretty amazing team, I must say, I was quite lost in what can I do as an artist to protect my artwork. I know that there are some services in US specifically that you can register your art to prove your authorship, but it was all complicated and too much paperwork for me. So for me, just uploading an image, signing it digitally, prove the authorship, that is fantastic. There's one other thing that I really like here. We didn't speak about it yet, but it's the sort of an academic transparency to the creative process. It's the possibility to properly identify, to properly credit the contributors. Specifically in design, the final artwork, the final proposal is not the work of one person. And I would be more than happy to properly credit the people. They were provided me, let's say, with the engine model for my vehicle or stuff like that. And that it has a beautiful side effect as well. I'll speed it up. It helps me to build up sort of a social awareness. That person who built that model will trust me next time, and they will probably provide me or invite me for another project. So there's definitely a social level that helps this whole CRI to have the right to exist.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mike. Maybe a question to Professor Klein here. Having also had a preview of what Wacom is trying to do, maybe quickly if you can share, where do you see the value in a service like this?
Yeah, the value is clear. You don't have to think about this issue all the time, over and over again, especially when your work gets abused and you know that someone is making money with it and you have no, let's say someone in Russia makes money with it. What will you do? Or someone in Asia, you can't do anything. What I do to sensitize young people is I'm one of the admins of a bigger Blender group on Facebook with 72,000 members. And when I share work of other people, I always give the credits. Yeah, I do, even when I find something where I think, oh, this is cool work, but I don't know the original artist really, I try to research and give the credits. Otherwise, I would not publish the stuff. Yeah, to teach these people here, when you show stuff or when you take stuff from another website, don't present it like it's your work. There can be a big misunderstanding at the end. Give the credits, yeah, find out who the artist is, give all the credits, the Twitter accounts, the ArtStation accounts, that people get awareness, yeah, and that is one goal maybe to push the people forward. Yeah.
I personally feel that this would be a very valuable thing as well, to be able to see the attribution behind it. And I think everyone feels quite strongly about this. The clock is mocking me at this time, so I'm forced to speed up a bit. So Dr. Sievers, maybe we would like to hear from you, because having seen the service yourself, what Wacom is trying to do you think that this can address some of the commonly occurring problems that you see from your profession?
Yes, completely. I think already discussed, there are two key issues. It's proof of authorship again, and it's having a proper license agreement. And for both, it's very beneficial to have the CRI. So, and I think most artists would actually love to agree proper licensing terms, but as already said, having to ask a lawyer for a draft is simply too expensive for some projects. And being myself a lawyer, it's a pity for my profession, but I think it's really good to have a CRI and to reduce also the transaction costs. And this will help to that people will more likely share the content and work together. Of course, it's more easier to work together and to share also the revenues generated with the outcome. So, and I think that's good.
Yeah, that's the goal we pursue. I think the philosophy is really, we want to make all of this complicated things simpler and easy to address in the digital space, especially. And maybe Jeremy, do you see this something going in the right direction? Because you're very passionate about this topic. You're very much into the aware about the legality side of things, and you're also someone who believes in the community aspect. So, what are your thoughts around it?
I think, like Robert said, I think this is it's definitely a step forward. I think it's a great initiative. I trust Wacom to have the best interest of artists at the heart. I think I have some concerns around enforceability. And ensuring the veracity of the users and the input that they create. I think Wacom is very magnanimous to put its weight and its resources behind an initiative like this. So I think it's fantastic. I'd be delighted to sign up. The real question is, like, again, even inside this walled garden, if you will, like how do you stop fraud, and how do you ensure the truth of the information being presented?
Yep, definitely some challenges for us as well, which we want to work together as a community. And I think this is the beauty about being an initiative, that we are not alone, so we will gather our it's the community aspect here to push us ahead. Yep, thank you very much. It was a great discussion. We have hardly 2 minutes left on the clock. If there are any questions that we have from the audience or someone watching us live, okay, we have a lot of questions, seems.
One short question, I guess. Mike gave a brief hint, but how, as an artist, can I get my creative rights into your platform?
That's a great question. Maybe I can answer this.
Please.
I signed an NDA.
So a simple way to like how we envision this is that we are focusing on export workflows. So as an artist, when you're done with your creative content process, it would simply you run it through the system. So we are building a platform where you can just pass your artwork through the service once. We wouldn't store it. We would just embed your unique fingerprint in the content that can refer to you always. And this where we are investing on to create this inseverable bond. So that's a very simple explanation on how it works. Joss is next, our lead architect as well, and can talk about a lot of the technological stuff behind this as well.
Maybe we can also point out that whoever has a question can, write you or us or anyone, to follow up.
Yeah, absolutely. As well after the session as well. Do we take a question here?
Sorry. How can you ensure that the watermark is traced in other platforms?
Yeah, again, a great question. I think this is where we want to work with partners here. So of course, we will provide APIs for other partners to access the service. So anyone would be able to access our APIs to see who's the owner of an artwork. So a platform can do this, any application can do this, any service can do this, which means that wherever you choose to transact with your creative content, they would be able, if they would want to, right? If they would want to, they would be able to retrieve this information directly by integrating with us. But on the other hand, we also have a website service where you can simply drag and drop creative content that would reveal kind of who's behind the content in that regard. So I guess, yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. It was great having all of you people. Thank you for supporting this initiative. And as Robert mentioned, if there are any questions, please reach out to us. We are always here for you. And yeah, have a great rest of the show. And great day to everyone here. Thank you.